Hey ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Humbert here. Today we're going to be doing Unit 2 Notes 4 for the first part. So we're just going to go through part of the note video today and you'll do the second one in the next day, okay? So first of all, let's talk about solving systems by elimination. So previously we used a method called substitution. Now I'm going to introduce to you a method called elimination. And you can choose which method you like to use. Both will yield the same result. One typically tends to be easier than the others depending upon the student. So let's take a look at solving systems by elimination. So to solve systems by elimination, okay, you need to add two equations together. And when you do that, you want it so that one of the variables to cancel. So what you want to do is you want to look at that number outside of the variable. You want to make sure that that number is the same number and opposite when you're looking at the two equations. That's what's going to make them cancel out. And once they've canceled out, it's available to you to solve for the remaining variable. Then you can substitute that variable into one of the equations and solve for the other variable. That last step is very much like we did when we were doing substitution. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this would look like. So remember, we want to have the same number with opposite signs outside of one of the variables. It doesn't matter which of those variables we choose from. So if we look here, we look at negative, here we have negative x and positive x. Well, that's the same as having a 1 out front. So basically we have 1 and negative 1. Well, when you add those together, they're going to cancel out, which means we're ready to move on to our next step. We can add those columns together. So 2y minus y, well, that's just going to give me y. 10 minus 6 is going to give me 4. Well, conveniently, we already know what y is without having to do any solving. So now I need to solve for x. I can plug it into either one of these equations. It doesn't matter which one I plug into x. To me, the first one's going to be easier because it's just a positive 1x. So I'm going to leave the x in there, and then I am going to put in the y. So I keep x the same, and then I have 2 times my y. And so I took out the y and I put 4 in instead. So now I'm going to solve for x. So my x is going to stay the same. 2 times 4 is 8. And now I'm just going to solve this equation for x. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 8 from both sides. And I get that x is equal to 2. So now I know that x is equal to 2 and y is equal to 4. So I'm going to go ahead and write that out as a coordinate point. First my x, then my y. So I have the coordinate point 2, 4. Take a look at number 2. Now I notice I want to focus on my y's. So I notice that I have a negative y here and a positive y here. So I have the same coefficient, that's the number on the outside. So the number on the outside is the same with the 1, and then it has opposite signs. So I can go ahead and add down the columns. 2x minus 3x, well, that's going to give us a negative x. Our y's are going to cancel. And then 4 minus 8 is negative 4. So notice I'm just adding down the columns. I'm not subtracting. The only time subtracting would come in is if one of the numbers is negative. So we don't want to know what a negative x is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 1. That cancels this out to a positive x. Negative 4 divided by negative 1 is a positive 4. So now I want to take this 4 and plug it back in to get my y. Well, I think I'm going to plug it back into this top one up here because that seems the easiest to solve for y. So I'm going to take my x out completely and I'm going to put 4 in instead. And then I have my y, and that's going to be equal to 4. So everything stayed the same. All I did was substitute in my x. So 2 times 4 is 8 plus y is equal to 4. So now I need to get that 8 over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. So then I get that y is equal to a negative 4 when you do 4 minus 8. Okay, so then we want to write that out as a coordinate point. First my x coordinate, then my y coordinate. So then my answer for this one is 4, negative 4. Next, let's take a look at number 3. So for number 3, I want to take a look at those x's. And again, I notice that I have same numbers with my x's but opposite signs. So I'm actively seeking that out to make my job a little easier. So now I can go ahead and add down the columns. Negative 2x plus 2x is going to cancel out. 3y plus 2y is going to give me 5y. Negative 11 plus 6 is going to give me a negative 5. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 5 so I can solve for that y. Negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. So now I know that y is equal to -1. So I can plug in to either equation. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use the second one just for something different. So my 2x stays the same. Now I'm going to remove my y and put in a -1 instead. And everything else stays the same. So now I'm ready to solve this for x. So I have 2x. 2 times -1 is a -2, and that's equal to 6. So now I want to take that -2 and bring it over to the other side. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So then I get 2x is equal to 8. And now finally, to solve for x, I need to divide both sides by 2. And we get that x is equal to 4. So now we want to write our answer out as a coordinate point, first x, then y. So we have x, which is 4, and y, which is -1. So your coordinate point is 4, -1. Let's take a look at number 4. So for number 4, again, I focus on my y's and I see that I have a +1 and a -1 for the numbers being multiplied outside of the y's. That means I can go ahead and just add down the columns. X plus 7x is going to give me 8x. 9 plus 7 is going to give me 16. So now we're ready to solve this for x. So I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 8, and that gives me that x is equal to 2. So now I know that x is equal to 2. X and 2 are the same thing. So where I see x up here, I'm going to go ahead and plug in 2. It doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to plug it into the second one. So I have 7 times 2 plus y is equal to 7. So all I did was remove my x and I kept everything else the same. Well, 7 times 2 is 14. So we have 14 plus y is equal to 7. So now I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides, and I end up with y is equal to -7. So last but not least, I want to write that out as a coordinate point, x, y. So first I write my x coordinate, which is 2, and my y coordinate, which is -7. So that right there is my final answer for number 4. Let's take a look at number 5. So for number 5, we have a dilemma. We don't have opposite signs. What I do notice, though, is that my y both have a -1. So we have the same number, but we don't have opposite signs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my equations and multiply it by a -1. So I'm going to distribute that -1 into everything that follows in that second equation. Okay, so then what I have is x minus y is equal to 9. And then this second equation, I'm going to change all of my signs, including the sign that's on the other side of the equal sign. Okay, so now I notice that here and here I have the same number with opposite signs. So now I can go ahead and add down that column. So x plus 7x, well, that's going to give me 8x. And that's equal to 16. So really number 5 is the same problem as number 4 once we multiplied by that negative. So I'm just going to finish solving it out for practice sake. So I'm going to divide both sides by 8 and I get x is equal to 2. Now here's the cool thing. You can plug it into this version, you can plug it into this version, or you can plug it into this version. It doesn't matter which version you plug it into. So let's plug it into that version that we created just for fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the x and I'm going to put 2 in instead, and then I'm going to solve for y. Well, this is going to solve exactly like number 4, and when we did that, we got -7. So then our coordinate point is 2, -7 for number 5. Next, let's take a look at number 6. So I noticed on number 6 that x's both have a -4, but they're not opposite. So we have to make them opposite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the second one by a -1. You could multiply the first one by a -1 if you wanted to. So now we're going to distribute that in. So then that top equation is going to stay the same. That bottom equation, everything is going to change signs, including that 10 on the other side of the negative, which is going to become, or on the equal side, which is going to become negative. So now I'm ready to go ahead and add down the columns. So when I add down the columns, the 4x's are going to cancel out. 2y minus 3y is a -y. 8 minus 10 is a -2. So now I want to know what regular old y is. So I'm going to divide both sides by a -1. So then I get that y is equal to a +2. Well, now I know that y is equal to a positive 2, so I see y here, here, or even here, I can plug it in for y. I'm going to plug it into the first one. So I'm going to keep my negative 4x the same. I'm going to substitute out my y and put in a 2, and then everything else is going to stay the same. So I get negative 4x plus 4 is equal to 8. So now I want to go ahead and get that 4 over to the other side. So we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. Negative 4x is equal to 4. And then finally, to solve for x, I need to divide both sides by a negative 4. And I get that x is equal to a negative 1. So x is equal to a negative 1 and y is equal to 2. So we're going to write that out as a coordinate point x, y, negative 1, 2. All right, last but not least, let's take a look at this word problem. The sum of two numbers is 12. Well, let's make our two numbers x and y. So x plus y is equal to 12. The difference of the same two numbers, so now we're going to subtract them, is negative 4. So difference means subtract. So really, this problem is very easily set up for elimination. So I can go ahead and add down the columns. X plus x is going to give me 2x, and then my y's are going to cancel. 12 minus 4 is going to give me 8. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2 and end up with x is equal to 4. So now I know x is equal to 4, so I need to figure out my y. So I'm going to take that x here and I'm going to plug it in for either one of these. I'm going to plug it into the first equation. So I have 4 instead of x plus y is equal to 12. Well, what plus 4 is going to give you 12? And that's going to be 8. So the second number of this word problem is just going to be 8. And again, you don't have to label this one because we're just dealing with numbers. So that concludes the first part of your note video, so you can go ahead and start the first part of your homework. Thanks for listening.